All right. Welcome everybody to the Internet Architecture Board Open Meeting, or the IAB Open Meeting. I am Wes Hardiker, and who are you?
I'm Mia Kulevin. I'm chairing the IAB.
Oh, that's right. I'm sure all of you know the note well, but I'm going to show it to you anyway because it's important. And I'm not a lawyer, so you should consult yours on what it means to contribute to the IAB or to the IETF as a whole. All those BCPs at the bottom are incredibly important, especially the ones related to anti-harassment, working group processes, code of conduct, copyright, patents, and those types of things. Meeting tips, everybody please do sign in with the QR code on the far left, or you can of course use the agenda that is in the data tracker. If you like being in a small cramped room, then you shouldn't sign in, because then we'll have less people in this room and we'll get a smaller room next time. So I really suggest you sign in so we get a nice big room like this one. Everything is recorded, so make sure that you know that both not only just the audio recording and the video recording, but the Jabber recording is recorded too, so please understand that when you are making comments either in person or online. So what is the IAB Open now that you're here? The IAB is organized this session for the past couple of years. And we really try and focus on two things, technical and architectural topics. And then we do have presentations recently about other standards organizations and what they are up to. And our goal is to increase the visibility of the IAB's work as a whole, and then to collect community feedback and input. In other words, we want to hear from you, so we look forward to your discussions at the microphones related to anything in today's topics. How do you reach us? We do have a mailing list. I think most people probably know it's iab@iab.org for anything that you need to comment to us about. Note that the mailing list is not just the IAB members. There's a list there that I'm not going to read, but there's actually a fair amount of other people that are on the IAB as well. We are fairly open in our communication. If you want to be on a mailing list where you can discuss architectural things and IAB documents and things like that, that would be Architecture Discuss, which is an open mailing list that anybody can join. We also have a group of liaison coordinators that are responsible for helping with the liaison management to all the other standards organizations of which we have an official relationship to. And you can reach us by mailing liaison-coordination@iab.org. Document updates. There's been a number of things that we've done lately. There's two right now in the RFC editor queue. That includes the Path Signals Collaboration document and the IAB Protocol Maintenance document. Both of those were recently put into past IAB's review. We have adopted another one recently about IAB privacy partitioning, which is an interesting document I encourage everybody to read. And then we're currently considering one about data minimalization principles, and feedback on that, of course, is always welcome as well on the Architecture Discuss list. There's two new documents. There is a recent report on the IAB workshop on the management techniques for encrypted networks that just finished. It was a fantastic workshop. And there was another one on the IAB workshop on environmental impact of internet applications and systems, which was another fantastic workshop that I unfortunately conflicted with, but I watched it later and it's very good. So next up, we're going to do a little bit on technical program updates. First off is the EDM program. The IAB runs a number of programs that are frequently technical in nature, and the evolvability, that is not a word I can say, deployability and maintainability program. And its goal is to really, explore and promote best practices in protocol design, interoperability, and maintenance. And it actually produced the IAB protocol maintenance document, which I talked about a second ago. We held a meeting Wednesday morning of this week talking about greasing, which is one of the IETF or IAB documents from a while ago. And there is a discussion going on in GitHub as well, and there's a mailing list. We encourage anybody that wants to participate in the discussion to please join the mailing list. Liaison updates. As I mentioned before, the IAB is responsible for managing liaisons to and from other standards organizations. We have a general update on the BBF. Dave is going to talk about that a little bit later. And then a couple other recent appointments. Charles Eckel was appointed as the IETF liaison manager to 3GPP. As Gonzalo stepped down, we thank him for his service. And Janos Farkas, I'm sorry, I probably am butchering your name, was appointed as the IETF liaison manager to IEEE 802. That says 11. I thought it was .1. It was 1, yeah. .1. Yep. And we thank Eric for his past service as well. And then we had a rather lively. We held our first liaison office hours today at lunch. All I did was talk for an hour and a half, and we skipped lunch. But it was a fantastic set of discussions. So we're pretty much committed to holding those. I think probably at every IETF now, because it was such a lively and helpful discussion. And one of my other liaison managers is nodding vigorously in the audience. Workshops. We recently held a workshop, as I mentioned, on the environmental impact of internet applications and systems. The initial report is posted, and you should all know that all of the workshops do end up getting rebroadcast to YouTube, so you can go watch them later if you missed it. They're fascinating to listen to in general. And then finally, this is the agenda for the rest of the time. So that was the welcome and status update by mostly me, because somebody else is tired. And we're going to turn it over next to the BVF liaison update to hear what that body is doing. And then we'll go into energy and productivity, a presentation about Hiroshi from the University of Tokyo. And then we'll also have a discussion about the e-impact workshop by Yari. And then we'll have open mic at the end for any feedback that you guys want to give us. But in the meantime, I'll turn it over to Dave.
Hi, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name's Dave Sittercope. I've been in and around the broadband forum and the IETF for longer than I care to admit, but it's at least 2 decades. And I've kind of had this position as the liaison manager longer than I care to admit, and I think that's almost been 2 decades. So I'm going to go through the liaison relationship between the IETF, IAB, and the broadband forum. So go ahead and hit the slide. So just some history and background, because people think the broadband forum is the follow-on from the DSL forum, and that is true. It is. It actually stems back all the way to the early 90s from the ADSL forum. On the other side, around 2009, they did a merger with what used to be an amalgamation of the Frame Relay Forum, the MPLS Forum, and the ATM Forum. So this kind of gives you a feel for the combined history that the group now has. And so you would naturally start to see some of the interest levels and some of the work going on here. I mean, from the Frame Relay MPLS ATM, there's been a lot of MPLS related, PALS, PWE3 related interest. From the DSL forum, obviously, ANCP, disaggregated or broadband network gateways kind of stuff, and also the residential gateway work that goes on here. Okay, go ahead. So the relationship itself is very informal. The 2 things that I'm going to stress most is informal and lightweight. There is no written relationship. There is no need to have a written relationship. Basically, the relationship is managed between the actual liaisons that are exchanged between the 2 groups, coordination between mutual participants of the 2 groups, yours truly, the liaison manager to the BBF, and the BBF liaison officer, which I'll come back to. So again, it's light, it's easy, and it's been working for quite a long time. The one thing I need to stress about the relationship is that the 2 organizations are very different from each other. The IETF is open public, the BBF is not. It is a membership consortium. The members are companies. And as a membership consortium, it actually has a confidentiality clause on its membership agreement, which means all the work in progress is kept confidential to its membership. What that means to the IETF is that there should be no work in progress of the BBF just shared or distributed around the IETF unless it came from a liaison from the BBF. Once it comes here, sky's the limit. We can post it anywhere we need to. We probably want to keep that related or confined to IETF facility, but they understand that by liaising things to the IETF, it actually becomes part of the IETF materials. Okay. Then the coordination itself. There are no teleconferences. I kind of stole these slides from Russ Housley, who did the IEEE coordination. We don't have teleconferences, except on rare occasions. All the coordination is just inter-organizational engagement. It's done by emails mostly or face-to-face interactions at the meetings, either this meeting at IETF or at the BBF meetings. On a rare occasion, there will be a phone call. It's usually between a couple of area directors and maybe what used to be the IAB shepherd, now it would be the coordinator, and myself and the interested parties that are involved in the actual topic. And to quote Russ's slide, historically, the work of the coordination has fallen on the individuals attending the meetings. It's exactly what we do between the BBF and the IETF. Okay. So the statements and the managers, the liaison managers, of course, I just mentioned I'm the liaison manager between the IETF and the BBF. I also happen to be the liaison officer from between the BBF and the IETF. So I talk to myself a lot. Seriously, I mean, it's bidirectional and it's pretty lightweight. It's easy to coordinate between the two roles because I just switch brain sides. And one thing I need to stress, though, is that no matter which side I'm representing, it's fair, right? There's no bias here. I've got just as much allegiance to one as the other for the 2 decades that I've been working with both groups. Generally, a lot of the topics and issues come down to process, and I'm very familiar with both groups and the process on both sides, and try to stick to very set, what I would call a mantra. So if you're over in the BBF, you'll hear me say, if people want to change an IETF protocol, the mantra is no. You go to the IETF and you change the protocol in the IETF according to the IETF process. If I hear people trying to change the BBF architecture here, no. You go to the BBF, you do the work in the BBF according to the BBF process. It's very methodical. Some people I'll start to say it and they'll say, yeah, we got it. That's how often they've heard me. The guidance on liaison relations, on the liaison statements is recorded in BCP 103 and the BBF liaison page. Those are both wide open. You can go take a look at those. The other thing I need to stress is statements. We've had some issues in the past on people coming into one group or the other and making assertions that, for example, the BBF is taking this direction, or the IETF is, fond of this work or promoting this work. One thing I try to stress is, and I've written this more from the BBF point of view because I've seen it more in the IETF related to BBF work, is any statements that you hear, verbal or otherwise, representing the BBF work or its direction or agreements, the organization itself, anything you hear people say about the BBF on behalf of the BBF must be supported by a written liaison. If it's not, it's a figment of their imagination. I mean, so seriously, if it's not, it may not be credible and it needs to be validated. And the only way to validate it is to come talk to yours truly, and I will make a determination. Usually there'll be some liaison and process and it's fine. Sometimes this happens inadvertently, sometimes not. But it's really important. I mean, there's been issues in the past where folks have made assertions in the middle of a working group meeting about BBF taking a direction to justify support of a draft or adoption of a draft. And there was some confusion there. Let me just leave it that way. Okay. We have naming and numbering. I put a link in the slides. You can click that if you want, but there's a spiffy brand new name and numbering page and numbering authority for BBF. And when it comes to the registries for the protocols, there's just a couple of very simple rules that we try to follow. You know, when BBF's making a reference to IANA, they should be checked prior to going to final ballot. That's the BBF process. When the IETF makes a document makes a reference to a BBF registry, the reference should be checked before IETF last call. Okay. This is kind of the meat of the situation of where we are right now. This is a snapshot. So the work that's of mutual interest today, this could change tomorrow, but today, it's around, and I've used the BBF titles for this work, but you'll see analogous titles in like an IPPM working group. So it's the IP capacity metrics and measurement work that's driven largely by Al Morton. It's the quality attenuation measurement work that's driven by a couple companies. One is called OutSys, the other one is called PNSol. Another one is called Domos. You'll see drafts on the agendas for IPPM related to that work. There's work on what BBF calls common Yang. It's basically Yang models that are common across all of the architectures and work that they do. And that's coordinated with NetMod and the ops area. We actually, for a long time, had a gentleman that we the BBF had a gentleman that would come and work very hand in hand with the Yang doctors and is very knowledgeable in Yang. And the BBF has adopted many of the same practices the IETF has adopted. So for all practical purposes, he's kind of a proxy Yang doctor. The work is, and BBF also deals, has a lot to do with STAMP. And we've got mutual participation on both sides there. There's some work on disaggregated broadband network gateways, or DBNGs. So basically taking your broadband network gateway and splitting it apart into control plane, user plane. And there's some protocol implications there that could come back to IETF on control the protocol you use between the control plane and the user plane. And also the last bit is for hybrid access work in the BBF, they lean on MPTCP quite a bit.
So Dave, you know the MPTCP working group is closed, right? I clicked the button myself. Pretty sure about this.
Yeah. So, now you tell me. Okay, well, they're still using it. It didn't go away. And there's other, this is not an exhaustive list. There's other work, but these are the top of mind ones that they're working on right now, or working with right now. By the way, the MPTCP thing is coming back. So, okay, so in summary, we've got a good working relationship. It's decades old, and it's informal communication between the leaders and participants. It's usually a very small community of people. We do the coordination by email, face-to-face meetings. We have conference calls when we absolutely need them. Most folks know me as the liaison manager officer, and we identify potential areas of conflict really early and take care of them as fast as we can. And the two things that I need to stress is, one, watch for any work in progress that's not anchored by a liaison. And if you hear any claims about BBF work or interest not supported by a liaison, let me know about that too. And that's it. Any questions? It was crystal clear. No one has any questions. Okay, Brian.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, Brian.
Chair of IPPM, former, I think I was I forget what it was called, but like I was the IAB.
You were the liaison shepherd, my boss.
Yeah. Exactly. Liaison shepherd. That's what
yes.
Yes. Thank you a whole lot for 2+ decades of service here. I was always really impressed with how this relationship worked. It's happy. I'm really happy to see it going on. Have you thought about who the new Dave is? Because I'm not sure you want to do this for another 40 years. I mean, I think we'd be happy with that, but.
No, I don't. Yeah, no, we're in search of a follow-on to my act. Let me just leave it at that.
Very cool.
And there are many people.
Think about that.
Well, The unfortunate thing is I had my eye on Barbara Stark to take it over, but she just up and retired. So that's out. There are other people that might be able to fill the shoes. So
Cool. All right. Thanks a lot, Dave.
Speaking with my liaison coordinator hat on, we are always looking for names of follow-ons so that if anybody, is interested in liaisoning with any other organization, we're always looking for backups and extra people to help. That was a good hour of today's hour and a half long conversation at the liaison coordinator office hours. So yes, thank you very much for your help.
one of the hurdles to finding a new person is the travel requirement. If people are required to go to both sets of meetings, you need to pretty much find somebody who's doing that anyway. And
That
that's
sounds
what
like a question
That's what
I
I've been bumping up against a little bit.
That
but-
sounds like a question I should be asking. How much do you travel?
Okay, but thanks a lot for the update. That was really helpful. Yeah. Okay. Next, we have Hiroshi presenting us a little bit the local view on some energy topics, because what we're planning to do is have a little bit of a discussion about this topic as a follow-up from the workshop we had last December. So we're going to have Hiroshi presenting first, and then we get Yari with the update from the workshop, and then we have a discussion at the end of these two presentations. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is Hiroshi Saki from the WIDE project. Thank you for coming for the Japan, Yokohama again. The first welcome for you. I'm gonna talking about the current research and development status of the energy issue plus the internet core, especially the public core of the internet contribution to the future energy system I want to talk about. Next, please. This is actually the conclusion of my talk. Our territory is public core of the internet, I believe. Then the hardware infrastructure and system architecture of public core internet plus modern computing platform and digitized functions shall dynamically change local and global infrastructure topology of the power consuming network. That's a huge triggered by the carbon neutral requirement. And also important feature of the internet architecture is interoperability and data transparency to everyone and everything can deliver the four goals benefit simultaneously by single platform. Those are the new function, efficiency improvement or power saving. That goes to the cost reduction of the system and security improvement. In order to do that, we need really better public core of the internet for the Earth. Next, please. So this is the what I want to cover today. Quick, please. Our area is by IT. Not of IT. I mean, there is no, semiconductor business or data center implementation. There are a lot of work implementation thing, though we working of the network. So how the network going to contribute? That contribute to the as-is system and go to the 2B. The first one is as-is going related with the digital twin. Next, please. When you have the digital twin, that was 12 years ago, I worked with the power saving business against the serious tsunami in Japan 12 years ago. Then digital twin contribute those huge number of the contributions for the energy saving by the multi-vendor sustainability by TCP/IP and the global standard for interoperability for the future facility network. That's very obvious. Next, please. Though an important thing I've learned, or I've learned from that experience is important role. Capacity of the power network is determined by peak power demand. Reduction of demand at peak time contribute to the reduction of the huge cost of the capacity for power of supply network for the power distribution network. That is huge contribution by the internet-based control system against the demand changing in the user side. Next, please. So, and also those areas, especially IoT people, really hated TCP/IP, internet. They love isolated. They don't want to cooperate together. And also at the time, they have a very bad communication infrastructure. Therefore, 12 years ago, we worked on the DTN. That's completely different from existing broadband internet, always connected with a high quality, though those industry doesn't have such a quality. So we worked on the DTN at the time. Next, please. So when we think about the open data for the buildings or campuses, what we did was let building like the internet. Their philosophy or their tendency is completely different from us. So I want to welcome them into our chat, into our community, respecting end users to be able to access any data, any component. That is what the internet is going to do, make it in the existing network. And also end user, not the vendor, can provide service using the open data. That's we focused on and worked on. Next, please. So this is the architecture we built at our campus facility system. Basically, the legacy system doesn't have any global connectivity. So we're providing the LOD function to every single devices, which was not connected to the internet. And also independency from hardware for applications. That is the modern cloud computing is now doing. Similar thing can apply to those legacy facility network. Next, please. So this is the used to be legacy system has. There's 4 KPI. New function, energy productivity improvement, carbon neutral, and security for BCP. All of those, they have isolated implementation for each KPI. So what the function of the internet or internet-based energy system is? Quick, please. Yep. Based on the open platform, all of those 4 perspective or KPI can be conjunction with by the single infrastructure. Next, please. Then multiple payoff by the economy ecosystem, by the sharing economy going to be done in power consuming system, quite similar to the internet infrastructure we have. Next, please. So that is as is system, the contribution of the internet to that. Next one is the 2B. That is the cyber first implementation for the energy system from point of view. Next, please. So this is my favorite slide. This is the innovation in logistics. About 200 years ago, we have very exclusive separated logistics per merchandise. Human being invented container and pallet in the logistics. Then we have physical sharing economy. Apparently, you enjoy the thing, right? Every single package be able to use ship, train, car, or ship. Everything be able to carried by the common package. Then, in the late 20th century, we invented the internet, human being. Structure of the system is quite similar to, right? Then we have the new function. That is when we send in the program or recipe, 3D printer be able to make any kind of physical materials. That is huge innovation to the logistics, right? Based on the fiber system or digital bit sending instead of the physical object transfer. Next, please. So this is the object transfer or object mobility over the sharing platform. That's a wonderful feature of the legacy logistics system, as well as the internet. that the digital object transfer over the sharing platform. Then, when we think about the energy efficiency point of view, the cost of the object transfer or mobility point of view, physical mobility is far expensive than digital. That's the two-digit difference has been recognized by everyone. That huge energy productivity improvement gonna done, replacing physical transportation to digital. Thus, we have already realized that that is a quite important contribution by the public core internet, I believe. Next, please. So this is a real, very simple equation. Transfer or mobility cost that is related to the energy productivity. Electricity versus digital bits. About 100 times different, which means huge infrastructure redesign we can do with a digital bit transmission system. Next, please. So this is, again, the speed of light is not fast. That is when we think about the Earth, that's a real fact. Then you have a lot of your, CDN or the other technique to be able to come up with those latency, right? And also the second one is maldistribution of the energy. Far north, far south, it's very cold. Yes, that's a very, very good skiing field. It's good for data center. Regarding the rural area, that's a carbon negative. So that, when we think about the global space, how are we making an efficient structure of the power consuming system? Next, please. So this is one of the example the BMW did more than 15 years ago. They have the data center in Germany. That's very expensive power land, right? That's very dark side from the viewpoint of the carbon neutral point of view. When they analyze their job, 80% of the process doesn't require latency, nor serious data protection. So they realize 80% of the data or processing be able to done outside Germany, where 100% renewable energy site in Iceland and Sweden. Only 20% remain in the dark side in Germany from the viewpoint of the carbon neutral or renewable energy point of view, as well as cost. Next, please. So this is related to the transfer cost of the data center or computers to the green site. 100% renewable energy in those countries. And also there are a lot of non-real-time processes. That is very, very different from the existing, UI point of view, process one to the nearby UI. That is changing a lot. Huge computing that does not require real-time response we have. So we could change. So when we think about global scale, Gen2 2DS, use the renewable energy, use the cool air, as well as cost reduction. As I share with you, replacing power cable that is copper, that is 100 times expensive compared to the communication cable, that glass. That is highly related to the energy as well. So this is how we are working with the people about the submarine cable to the North Pole or Arctic area. When we have those cables, we can connect a hot area with the very cool area. So that is one of the important infrastructure change or improvement in order to help the Earth from a viewpoint of the global power consumption. Yes, computer network, providing dramatical topology change or distribution change of the computation and cooling function at all. Next, please. And also, when you think about this space, that is yet another interesting new area, how we can put the energy consuming function in the space. We have wireless communication, right, which is far cheaper than sending energy to them. And also we are going to have the moon. When we think about the moon, moon is a part of our resource for the human being. Then we really need a new directorial network, that interplanetary networking that requires new transportation or new routing because of the strong or large different requirement from the viewpoint of latency. That's again, I shown you. When we think about Earth, latency is quite serious. So when we think about the space, so interplanet, the latency is far serious than when we think about the globe or the Earth. So this is conclusion to you. We IETF working on public core of the internet. The internet consuming a lot of energy now with the data center in this day, right? So when we efficiently or strategically use those infrastructure, existing power consuming physical infrastructure be able to change a lot and also easily change the topology. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's a really nice insights and some really nice examples how the internet can help to save energy and some thoughts. You can sit down. We take any kind of discussion after Yari's talk. Thank you. There's already some discussion going on in the chat, but we have Yari reporting a little bit from the workshop, giving a broad perspective about what was discussed at the workshop, and then we have a discussion all together at the end.
Yes, thank you. So I'm just going to do a very brief piece on the workshop, high level. Hopefully in the proceedings page, you will find these links for the draft for the IAB workshop page. And there's also a new list, e-impact@ietf.org, that you can use for discussion and is being used for discussion. Next slide, please. So what was this? This was a IAB organized workshop with altogether 73 participants, not just sort of regular IETF participants, but also research and a little bit like adjacent communities that are important for this topic, but are not maybe so much present in the IETF normally. We had participation through submission of position papers, as is quite common for the IAB workshops, 26 papers. And if you wonder why the participant number is higher than the paper number, that's because we also accepted all the co-authors, which were plentiful in some of the papers. And that was actually good because that was a really good discussion from all of them. And of course, we care about the environment. We care about the planet, humankind's destiny. But we also happen to care about business things. And this is one of those areas where business and good of the humankind may actually be aligned. That is, if you sell a service or a product, the chances are that your consumer customers or business customers are asking you to tell you what is your sustainability impact and asking you to minimize it. And so the workshop was about helping with the environmental costs of the internet or its benefits to the internet in terms of in the rest of the society, or provide better understanding or perhaps starting some useful research. And maybe next slide. So what did we learn? So for me, at least, sort of the big mind-blowing thing was that there's so many things under this particular topic, and that different people think in very different terms. Like, we are all experts in certain fields. And we like to think about those fields when we're doing something, but other people are focusing on very different things, and actually all of them matter for this particular issue. And it's not the case that I don't need to do anything because those guys buying green energy will handle it. That's not the only thing that we need to do. We need to also improve on our side. And the same is true of basically everything that's visible on the screen. So if you look at on the right side, there's a bunch of protocol-related things. One example, Michael Welzel and his colleagues looked at how to use congestion control algorithms and improvements there to actually also improve sustainability and reduce energy consumption with some surprisingly good results. And you can look at other things, routing and so on. That's been a popular discussion topic. But it's not the only thing. We here design protocols at the IETF, but it's like there's plenty of other stuff outside the IETF, obviously. I happen to work with some of my colleagues who are focused on building radio networks and in particular power amplifiers for some of their radio equipment. And it turns out that that's a huge source of energy consumption and can be also a source of many improvements. And it's an interesting case or example. I'm bringing it up because it shows linkage between implementation, optimization thing, and standards, because standards also dictate in some cases some things. In this particular case, how often you have to send certain types of messages is specified in standards. And if you relax those rules, then you actually have a little bit more room in the implementations to shut things down, put them to sleep for a millisecond or a microsecond. But it doesn't stop there. There's also tons of other stuff. We can talk about our understanding of this problem. What does the internet use? And it's actually a little bit fuzzy. It probably needs more research. We can talk about metrics. Many of us at the IETF love to talk about that, but it's also even beyond that. It's about like how do we use it for, improving the electricity production, for instance, or what is the societal impact of this, and what other actors there are in this space. Next slide. So this is my last sort of proper slide. I'll flash through a couple of examples from the rest of the workshop. But what were the conclusions? A bunch of things and a bunch of areas that we could work on, and some of them have been listed here. So obviously the internet needs to help both the rest of the society and also reduce itself or its own impacts. And it's also not entirely new for the IETF to work on this kind of useful things for the environment. Like many of the things that we've been working on, such as video conferencing, are actually quite helpful for the environment. Torres did a nice draft on that. Go read that his paper and the draft if you're interested in the more full list. And of course, these problems are hugely complicated, and like there's many interrelations, and it's also crucial to understand that there's many trade-offs and constraints. Like if you make a change in this routing thing here, maybe it impacts jitter or some other feature for the applications, and maybe that actually implies that then the, let's say, video conferencing doesn't work as well, and then I'm going to travel instead of use the video conferencing. So it's sort of complicated picture. And we do need to look at sort of beyond protocols. I mentioned the implementations example. We do need to look at metrics, measurements, and data, and running those experiments. Also, not just like the technology for the experiments, but actual experiments. We need a more dynamic ability to sleep. TVR, the new routing area working group, is one small example of that. We talked about data format choices. We talked about multicast, which might be applicable. We talked about lots of other things, avoiding proof of work crypto assets. John Matson had a paper about that. And we also had a chat about environmental consideration sections in IETF drafts, and didn't actually conclude that discussion, but it's an important topic to consider nevertheless. Anyway, quick flash through a couple of things. So Welzel, in addition to this thing that I mentioned earlier, he also looked at trying to narrow the CO2 footprint of the internet, and came up with some numbers between 0.5% and 1.17%, and that's his opinion. But actually, it's quite interesting because there's a large variety of things that when you read other work. Next slide, maybe. We also looked at all kinds of measurements that, like, what's happening with the growth of things, and from different perspectives. The first one is from Yves Schuler, who had some charts on how certain people are expecting the energy consumption of the overall industry to grow. We looked also at this from a perspective of, like, where is it correlated with, or with what it is correlated to. And Jens Malmodin had a presentation about access network operators in Europe and how their electricity usage is relatively flat, regardless of, like, how much data usage is actually growing as it is growing. Finally, David Sheen had a talk about how, like, if you assume that the energy consumption is actually proportional to, like, you know, how large piece of equipment you have, and when you have to upgrade, like, it's the peak of the demand curve is actually dictating when you have to upgrade to a bigger device, and then that actually brings along with it some more energy consumption, and that can be bad. Of course, it's a complicated thing because technology can also change, and can you shut down parts of your device even if you have a lot of capacity. Next slide. Suresh and Carlos talked about how we actually need to optimize not just for throughput, but also a bunch of other parameters, including energy efficiency. And we might be going, like, first step is visibility, but ultimately you might want to end up in a state where you have some kind of automatic self-optimization. Next slide. And one more example is about data format. So this was an example done specifically about CNML in IoT systems, and where you can have a choice between JSON versus CBOR. And not surprisingly, you actually use less bytes and less energy if you use the more compact format. And the lesson for us, I guess, is that we should consider using some of these things in other protocols as well. Like HTTP2, I guess, is binary format compared to some of the other previous versions. But for new protocols, this is a thing to potentially consider. And I think I'm done. I guess, at least from my perspective, the interesting thing for this room to discuss is what can the IETF do, and what are the immediate short-term next steps that would be most worthwhile for us to move forward on this. And if there's no silver bullet, but we can make an impact every year, then that would be good.
Right. Thank you very much, Jari. And thank you to both of our speakers for the energy-related topics tonight. We would like to take any comments or questions related to either of the two topics. If you want to put your name in the queue and come to the microphone. I think that, this is certainly an area where the IETF can use a lot of discussion. Interestingly enough, we've had many discussions for a long time about travel and all the other stuff, but the ramifications of EMPEX on actual protocols and things like that have not been discussed quite as much. Brian, go ahead.
So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Good whatever. I was waiting for somebody else to put their name in the queue so I could collect my thoughts, but nobody else did, so this is going to be slightly rambling. Please feel free to just shut off my video at any time. So I was very sad to not be able to be a part of the energy efficiency workshop. For purely selfish personal reasons, I would like another workshop like that, because I would like to participate in the following one. I have opinions here. It seems to me from the actually, could you go back one slide? Because I think because it seems to me that a lot of the problem here is actually that sort of Venn diagram of what to optimize for, right? Like, we have this for anything when we're actually talking about bringing energy efficiency or sustainability in the second order, right? Like, so, you know, maybe you don't want to create a whole bunch of e-waste with the upgrade cycle that is implied by the growth of protocols and the growth of codes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? We're adding another set of dimensions to optimize for. And that's why I think one of the things that I saw in the workshop report is lots of questions, lots of sort of like expansion of the problem space. And I think that's the phase that we're in right now. I think that's really good. Not really much in terms of contraction, right? Like, so it's like we're getting to terms with how much bigger this makes the problem space. So I definitely think that this is something that the IETF should be considering with respect to protocol development, right? Like this is an important important knob that we can give people who deploy our protocols. It's important to consider the impacts of the physical infrastructure that is implied by the protocol. I don't know that that's going to be anything other than like a talking and coming to terms with the problem thing for a little while. And that's probably okay. So I think what I'm asking for is an IAB program in this space, but I'm not sure yet. So I'll let Rich pontificate for a bit on that. I think that we need a place to talk about this and a place to continue talking about this. And it sounds like Yari has an opinion.
Yeah, thank you. Either one of our speakers, you're welcome to come up to and answer.
Always have an opinion. So I forgot to say one thing is that we also have been having this side meeting just actually before this meeting where we were talking exactly about what you were basically raising, that we're sort of expanding and this space is huge, so maybe we can't actually do all of it. And there was a feeling from many people that maybe now it's time to narrow down on the short-term achievable things, and how do we actually go about that? Is this like a BOF? And I happened to be talking to Miriam, and she suggested that maybe this could be an IAB program also. And I guess there's multiple options. Of course, one constraint here is that like there's probably like things on many areas. So this isn't like one working group. If you actually do an update on this or that, then it could be multiple working groups.
And I think that the role of the IAB here can be sort of as a coordinated role, right? Like that's what programs are good for, I think. So my opinion that this is an IAB program is being strengthened by this conversation.
Maybe, so I think the IAB program would be trying to identify concrete things we can do in the IETF and then hand it over to the IETF.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the model when programs are good.
Hello, this is Yoshizaki. The reason why I didn't touch on the particular concrete technology defined by the IETF was basically the architectural concept of the internet is quite important applied to the energy industry or energy infrastructure. Then the very better large scale, autonomous infrastructure, the core part of the internet, is important in order to help their innovation. That's the reason why I put what's going to happen when we have innovative infrastructure and technologies, especially electron going to the photon or quantum. Then what kind of architectural difference is going to be changed in public core? That's an interesting thing.
Yeah, there's a whole new topic. Rich?
Yes.
Anybody else that wants any questions related to the IAB Open session 2, you're welcome to join the queue beyond just, we only have about 6 minutes left. So.
Okay, well, we won't get an answer on this one. But as someone who helps spec protocols and formats, it seems that a really simple question that would be great to answer, but I think it might be unanswerable, is how much does it cost in carbon or whatever to compute something here versus sending it over there? And so if we could just build a simple economic model of all of the internet transport and all of the internet computations, or maybe, I'm exaggerating, but I think that would be a really interesting set of trade-offs, right? Because we talk a lot about oh, well, this is a better data format because it's fewer bytes on the wire, but there might be CPU costs that we're incurring, and knowing when and how to make those, getting some informed data about how to make those trade-offs could be very interesting, but I have absolutely no idea how to do it.
Yeah, that is a quite important point. How much cost for sending the data, the computation,
Yep.
plus latency requirement.
Right. I mean, we've already sort of figured out that it's better to do it at the edge, whatever that means. But where's the edge? And so anyhow, thanks.
Pete? Oh, there he is.
Going around the long way. Pete Resnick. Just to kind of air what was said in the chat room as Hiroshi was presenting, I thought, well, now, yeah, 3D printing is probably a lot cheaper, remotely than, moving the things around. But boy, what are the implications of moving the raw materials to do that 3D printing? And does that mean that mining is going to happen in interesting places that might be more expensive, either monetarily, energy-wise, societally? And then I'm looking at this that Brian had you put up, and I thought, oh, those sure look like knobs to turn, where turning the energy efficiency knob might change the latency and throughput knobs a lot. And I just feel like the calculations here get really interesting and complicated really fast. I always love the example of maybe the highest throughput is taking a bunch of thumb drives and putting them in the back of a truck and moving them cross town. So yeah, it seems really hard to calculate this.
I'm sure it is super hard. Just like one sort of optimistic view on this, like that it's not the case that we always degrade the other parameters by making the energy efficiency better. It can actually be a win-win in some cases at least. And it's certainly been true, like you introduce new technology and poof, suddenly you are faster and more energy conservative.
Yeah, also, the reason why I try to separate computation is that kind of simulation or evaluation is quite important. That's not a network issue, basically, right? Based on such a result, we want to optimize the network. And also regarding 3D printers, abuse thing, we really need those what kind of abnormal use going to do. That is our business.
David here. Has there been any analysis done on the ROI based on like the different phases, the life cycle or supply chain? Because you're talking about like having the IAB scope out some work and hand it over to the IETF, but then still, if you look at the whole supply chain, it's not just the IETF. You're talking about how vendors are manufacturing things, what materials they're using. And of course, the protocols could expose those things. And then there's some work the IETF could do, but still there's like some coordination. You can say like, okay, this is how much benefit the IETF could bring about through protocol work, but that's just say like 20% of the slice of the pie. And we need collaboration with other standards bodies or other vendors bodies in order to achieve the remaining 80% of the whole life cycle. Any kind of like analysis been done there?
Real quick answer. I don't think there's a full analysis anywhere, but things of this nature have been brought up. Lars Eggert, for instance, brought up in the side meeting that one has to be careful that the embedded cost in equipment and so on doesn't come much larger because we keep replacing the system components all the time because we have supposedly improved energy efficiency. So there are lots of trade-offs and connections here.
I misunderstood this question though. Important thing is we have the new component. We really need interoperability with them. Otherwise, we couldn't control them. So that is original idea of the internet itself. How we make interoperability among different equipments.
Yeah, Suresh Krishna, I'll just make a quick comment. Like to Rich's point, there's like a whole set of trade-offs in this space, right? So for example, like multicast came up with something that can save energy, but like then there's other set of people for whom multicast really wastes a lot of energy. So this is like, there's no easy answer here. So same for like David's point, right? And Pete's point as well. So like this thing is like a whole bunch of trade-offs, and one of the goals might be to just like document such trade-offs in some place. And so that's kind of a necessary condition for the sustainability consideration section. So how can we help people look at the sustainability costs of the decisions they are making? And if you look at the papers, David, like specifically, there's like some that talk about how we can have like something that's less optimized for today, but has a longer lifetime. So over the lifetime, it becomes like something that's like more efficient, right? So there's like a lot more content on the papers than like that's in the report. So it'll be great if you can actually go take a look and like kind of comment from there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Can we please thank our speakers for the wonderful discussion? Appreciate it. And that will conclude this IETF's IAB open meeting. See you in 117.